All right, and now to Gabe with our fantasy sleepers and so on.
All right, Chase. So I'm gonna run a few names by you. I have a list of names here in the fantasy world that are very relevant. I'll start off with the sell highs. My first name on the sell high list is Kyle Anderson.
Kyle Anderson.
Yes, Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson, I'll give you his stats. Over the last 2 weeks, he's been a top 10 fantasy player. That's right, he's ranked 9th in the last 2 weeks with percentages shooting 57% from the field, 85 from the line, 2.5 threes, 17.6 points, 4.9 boards, 3.6 assists, 2 steals, and a block.
Jeez.
With under 1 turnover a game. Now, for obvious reasons, I have him as the first sell high. What do you think of that?
I think that's a nice sell high. Mm-hmm. Now, Jaw just came back. Obviously, his stats are going to go down a little. But Kyle Anderson's a solid player. I did not know he was top 10.
Yes, he has been recently. Another thing is, if you try to trade him, the one thing is that his name doesn't have that much trade cachet to it.
He doesn't.
People aren't going to be looking at him, and even if they look at his stats, they're not going to want to deal for Kyle Anderson. So, for me, I would probably just ride him until the wheels fall off, honestly. But he is a sell-high target for sure. You can't be Kyle Anderson top 10 and not be a sell-high.
All right.
The next name for the sell-highs I have down here is Chris Boucher of the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
His stats have been dropping off recently, but he's still delivering top 50 value. But the reason I say this is because the Raptors are targeting a center at the trade deadline, and I don't think Boucher is going to be getting moved by the Raptors. So I can see him getting some obsolete minutes in the future. Not obsolete.
Yeah, I could see him getting 20 minutes a game.
That's what he's getting now. He's getting about 23 minutes a game. He has a lot of per minute upside, but once you get a real center in there other than Aaron Baines, he's probably going to be averaging 15, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And you just can't get much out of that. So, yeah, he's another sell high. And then my last sell high I have is Al Horford, who's 36 years old.
Yeah.
Averaging very good numbers. I think he's averaging about 16, 5, and 5. But the problem is he's old. He's 36. He's on a rebuilding team.
Doesn't play back-to-backs.
That's another thing. And, to be frank, he might get shut down later in the season. He could get shut down.
Good.
So
if a minor injury happens to Al Horford, they could sit him for extended periods.
Yeah.
Look at what happened with Steph last year.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to take it on to the next section, Gabe?
All right. So for my next section, I have 2 buy low names right here. The first one is my very own Michael Porter Jr.
Okay.
Last 2 games, he started to pick up his game. I need to pull this out just to...
Now, Michael Porter Jr., I actually tried to buy low him off of you.
Yeah, which was really dumb. I don't even remember what the trade was.
It was
something crappy.
He came off of a 0-point game.
Yeah, he went 0 for 8. But since then, he scored 14 points with 2 steals and a block, and then 22 points with 3 threes off of 50% shooting percentages. So
Okay.
he's starting to come back, but if you can squeeze in a buy low offer, now's the time to do it before he starts really taking off. Because in my mind, he has early round upside. He does.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking, he's a beast.
And I could see the Nuggets moving Will Barton to make Michael Porter Jr.
That
starter.
would be very
How many
nice.
minutes per game is Michael Porter Jr.
I
getting
think
right
he's
now?
getting about 30.
30? Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around 30. He gets anywhere from 30 to 25.
Okay. So 25 to 30 range, solid amount of minutes, but could go up depending on what Denver does. All right.
So for my next buy low, I have one Andre Drummond, who was one of my all-star guys earlier in the podcast. But Drummond, for the simple fact that he's being sat right now. His last couple games were pretty shitty. He was averaging 13 and 9 in the last 2 weeks before he got sat. So once
What was that sound effect again?
So once he gets traded, I think he's going to return to giving you not early, but mid-round value. And if you're taking free throws, that easily goes up to like top 20 value. He was averaging 17.5 points with like 15 rebounds before he started going down and everything started going on with about a steal and a half and a block and a half. You
All right.
can't get those numbers anywhere else, really.
So I have some questions for you. Depending on where Drummond moves, what would his stats look like?
Well, you got to name a team.
Because there's rumors he's going to the Nets, the Kings.
Now, if you're a fantasy owner, you do not want him to go to the Brooklyn Nets. You don't want him to go to the Nets.
That's what you got to bank on
Yeah.
if you're trying to buy low for Drummond.
Yeah, you
Now,
got to take a risk.
The deal is, I don't think it would not be smart for the Nets to pick up Drummond. They need a defensive big that could actually play because DeAndre Jordan.
Too. You wouldn't be able to buy
And you
other
don't have
defenders.
very much to give for Drummond. You've got Joe Harris to try to match Cap. You've got all those guys. Dinwiddie, yeah, I forget about that. But they applied for the player exception, so I'm not sure if they could deal him.
Oh, I think they got that, actually.
Yeah, they did. But they don't have much salary, so I don't think it's likely he goes to the Nets.
Yeah. If he went to the Nets, he'd be averaging under
So
12.
we're looking Nets. I could also see the Celtics trying to make a move for him.
Celtics, you wouldn't really want him to go to the Celtics. Celtics have a ton of offensive weapons.
Now, what's the ideal place for him to go to increase your fantasy value?
I would say to the Kings.
The Kings.
Kings. Or the Raptors.
Okay.
'Cause the Raptors, he'll get a ton of fucking defensive stats because they run their defense through big men. Whether he's a good defensive big man or not, he's going to be right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And then the Kings, he'll just put up stats. That's really all you can say about that. He's
Yeah.
going to put up mad stats if he goes to the Kings.
All right. And I agree. I think he'd actually be nice on the Raptors. He would definitely put up good fantasy value.
Yeah.
All right. On to the next
All
section.
right, moving on to the waiver wire. I have two names. These are my rule is that if you're a waiver wire pickup for this podcast, you have to be 50% or lower owned.
Okay.
In the leagues. Number one, I have Sadiq Bey,
Sadiq
the
Bey
rookie.
went off last week. I think he got player of the week in East. I think last week.
Now he was 9% owned last week, and now he's 43% owned. So if you do want to get him, you better get him while the getting's hot.
Exactly.
He's last 2 weeks he's averaging 55% from the field, 87% from the line, 3 threes, 15 points, 5 boards, and about a steal.
That's solid.
That is very
Especially
solid.
off of a guy on the waivers. You don't see that very
That's
often.
good for top 60 value.
Yeah.
And obviously, he won't be. That won't be kept up. The 55% from the field.
Obviously.
He'll probably be shooting closer to around somewhere like 45, 46, something like that, with maybe 2 threes. But still
solid
guy
value.
that you're gonna need, especially after the trade deadline, because you don't know what's gonna happen with Blake Griffin. He's already sitting, but that's another reason. Blake Griffin, he's out. Sadiq Bey's getting those minutes. So
Exactly.
just watch out for Sadiq Bey. The next guy, the last guy for the waiver wire is one Jay Crowder, who's been owned by 11% more people this week than last week. He's 44% rostered now in Yahoo leagues, and he's been putting up top 30 value. He's been shooting 48% from the field with 3 threes, 12 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block with 0.2 turnovers in the last 2 weeks. That is efficiency. That's
That is.
great. That's fantasy efficiency right there. Especially with the low turnovers like that. You don't find that anywhere else. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think Jay Crowder is solid.
Yeah.
He's a great pickup. He went off the last couple games, which is probably, I wanted to go back. This is probably one of the reasons why Mikel Bridges is a good candidate for a buy low.
Yes. Talk about that.
With Jay Crowder going off, I believe Mikel Bridges, when he is playing well, is a top 50 player in fantasy. Get you steals. He's actually averaging a block per game. Yeah. So he'll give you steals, a block. He'll give you threes and around 15 points per game. So he is solid. Lately, he's been in a little bit of a rough patch. Not so much shooting, like percentages, but he's just not shooting very much. Now, when Jay Crowder, I don't think Jay Crowder could keep this up over a long period of time. Personally, he hasn't shown in a season he can. But Mikel Bridges will be a good buy low option. Yeah. If you get the best Mikel Bridges there is, he is top 50 easily.
Yeah, I'd say
right now he's
top
averaging
30 than top 50.
Right now it's a 3 and 14 points per game. Just tough. Fantasy owners, if you have him, try to hold on to him.
Yeah,
it's rough right now, but I believe he'll do a lot better.
Okay, so I'm done with the waiver wire pickups. Now I'm moving on to just the mentions I have.
The honorable mentions for waiver wire?
No, just mentions. Just mentions. Fantasy trends. Over the last week, Bertons... last 2 weeks, he's been shooting 47.5% from the field with 4 threes a game, 14 points and 4 boards, and not much else. A steal a game. He was dropped by a lot of fantasy owners in the beginning of the season because he was shooting like 35% from the field. But he's picking it up.
And then he went out due to postponements.
Yeah, that too. The Wizards had that whole thing. They missed like 9 games in a row. Where do you stand with Bertons as far as how he could maybe keep this up? Because historically, he's not that great of a, field goal percentage guy. He's usually a tank in field goal percentage.
Yeah, so if you've got a low-efficient team and you want to boost up your threes, I think Bertons is perfect.
Would you view him as a sell high?
If you have him, I don't see much you could get for him. Exactly. Because he hasn't shown that he can keep this up this season. Right? Mm-hmm. He's had very minimal good games. Last 2 or 3 games have been solid.
Yeah, shout out to him on the 17th against Denver in the dub. He pulled up, a dub against Denver, by the way. He got 9 threes for 35 points and almost nothing else. He got a steal and a block, though. So he got some stocks going. Other than that.
But only thing is he will not be a great efficiency player for the season. No. Don't know if he's a guy you even keep on your team 3 weeks from now. Mm. Right? But if you need
an 8-team league, but you got to think about most of these people are in 12-team leagues.
That's true. If you think you're a low efficiency team and you want to boost your threes, Bertons is perfect. Mm-hmm. Especially for a guy that's at the power forward position that can hit threes like that. Mm-hmm. You're getting versatile needs from a big position.
Yeah.
He'd be perfect for a team like that. Now, if you're close in field goal percentage during the week, right? And you have him, it's going to be tough to keep him around.
Yeah, it will be. You might consider benching him, honestly, instead of dropping him, because those threes are very valuable.
They are.
There's just so many of them. And if you're like not really a strong 3-point team, he could single-handedly bring you up to the top tier.
He could. And if you're right there in field goal percentage, you could look to trade him. He won't have much value right now. But my key is to sell him on their peak. He just came off a 9 3-point game for 35 points. If you sell him at his peak, I don't see it getting much better than that. Mm-hmm. His value is at an all-time high right now.
Yeah. Now, my next guy is one of the more intriguing fantasy anomalies that I've seen since I've been playing fantasy, and that's Draymond Green, who over the last 2 weeks is averaging 2 made shots a game. He's got 6 points a game, 7 rebounds, almost 12 assists with nearly 2 steals and 2 blocks on 3 turnovers a game.
Now, I know Stephen Curry plays the point guard position, but Draymond Green is the point guard for the Warriors. He is dishing out assists so much. Mm-hmm. And does he give you defensive stats?
Yes, he does.
Can you go through that? What defensive stats does he give you?
1.7 steals and 1.6 blocks over the last 2 weeks for Draymond Green.
It's insane numbers.
Yes. His efficiency is lacking, but he barely takes shots. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter. That's not something that's going to hurt you, especially with that elite assist production and defensive stats production. You're not going to find that anywhere else.
No.
Now, do you think he can sustain that high of numbers?
I don't think he can sustain 12 assists a game.
No. Right now in the season, he's averaging 8.
I think that's right around where he'll be on the season. I could see him actually going a little bit higher than 8 due to how well he's been passing lately. Smartest player on the court almost at all times.
Yeah, working himself into shape. His defensive stats are starting to come up. He started a little slow in defensive stats. One of the guys that I missed on the waiver wire that I wanted in my shallow league.
What percent owned is he?
He's 89% owned. So
okay.
He's not
so if he's somehow available in your league, pick him up ASAP.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. That goes without saying. Yeah,
that's it for the fantasy.
That's all it for fantasy. Now we're going to move on to the draft.